Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Now, our next guest is the biggest player in the stablecoin space, Tether. He is Tether CEO Paolo Ardoino. And for this conversation, I do want to bring in as well Bloomberg Crypto and Digital Payments Editor, Mike Regan, who sits here on set with us as well. Paolo, thank you so much for coming in, and great to see you in New York. I know you were in Washington for the last couple of days here as the Senate addresses the Genius Act, which does call for federal oversight of large stablecoin issuers by the Federal Reserve. So I want to get your thinking. Will Tether, with its dominant USDT coin, be compliant with this?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. We are very honored for the United States, that is the biggest country in the world, to look at the technology, to regulate the technology that we created in 2014. So it's a very big step for us. And yes, we are very interested in seeing how the government of the United States is looking at regulating the stablecoin technology. It's important to us to see how the Genius Act is in fact distinguishing between foreign issuers and the domestic issuers. We believe in the importance of USDT as the most used digital dollar in all the emerging markets in developing countries, right? For a long time, we have been advocating how stablecoins are surely important also in the United States, but it's true that in the United States you have tens of ways to pay each other with Zelle, PayPal, bank accounts, credit cards, debit cards, cash, you name it. But if you go in emerging markets, there are 3 billion people that are called underbanked. They have been left behind by the traditional financial system. They need something that is stable in their lives, and that is the US dollar in a digital form, that is USDT. So for us, the main interest will remain outside the United States, but also we are open to create a domestic issued stablecoin that will be competitive under the US economy.
Yeah, Paolo, I'm curious, what are sort of the impediments to compliance that are so onerous for you to make USDT compliant in the US and for Europe for that matter? You know, one of the biggest requirements is that the reserves be treasuries and sort of cash-like money market mutual funds. You're doing that already, so I'm curious what sort of the impediment would be to make USDT compliant in the US and Europe?
Well, first of all, we are looking at the Genius Act in a way that will allow us to be compliant. So for us, it's very positive. So we can be compliant still having a strong focus on foreign markets, because again, those are the markets that need us the most. Yeah. When it comes to a local domestic stable coin, that it will have a different feature set than a foreign stable coin, because again, foreign stable coins are used for remittances and for savings. 37% of the user base of USDT is using USDT for savings. In the US, you wouldn't use stable coins for payments to improve the efficiency of money. So when it comes to MiCA that you mentioned, the issue that we have with MiCA is the fact that MiCA is actually a lower bar than the Genius Act. We are getting comfortable with the Genius Act. MiCA instead would force US dollar stablecoins to hold 60% of their reserves in uninsured cash deposits in European banks. That is a bad idea. The Genius Act is pushing for 100% in cash equivalent with a strong push towards US treasuries. That is a great idea. Rather than uninsured cash deposits, we have seen how our major competitor in 2 years ago had a huge issue with Silicon Valley Bank having uninsured cash deposits here in the US. So we learned from that lesson, and I think Europe is falling behind the regulatory framework that the US is actually pushing in a better way.
You mentioned how you may issue a new stablecoin for domestic use here in the U.S., so I'm curious where you are in that. Is this still in the conceptual stage, or if we were to liken this to a football game, is it in the first half, in the second half, in the extra time?
I would say it's closer to the second half. Of course, we want to see the Genius Act passing because, again, we have a foreign stablecoin that, by the way, is, I think, the most compliant stablecoin when it comes to all KYC, AML. We work with more than 255 law enforcement agencies across 50 different different countries. So when we're talking about BSA, when we're talking about compliant, we work directly with the FBI. We onboard the United States Secret Services. We have a relationship with the Department of Justice. So all that is covered, and that's, being foreign or domestic does not matter. We are going to comply, and we are going to set the bar every day higher. But in general, we think that is important for the domestic one to have a clear regulatory clarity before moving forward.
Paolo, obviously stablecoins were an invention of the crypto market. They were used for years, Tether used for years, just as sort of that dollar stand-in in the crypto markets. But now a lot of the excitement is for sort of non-crypto uses, payments companies, fintechs. Even in the Wall Street Journal today, a story about a consortium of the big banks considering creating their own stablecoin. It feels like the competition's coming from all around you, and a lot of it seems to be centered on that idea of using it as just a method of payment, quicker, faster, cheaper money transacting outside of the crypto market and in just regular traditional business. How does Tether fit into sort of that use of stablecoins?
Actually, in 2020, if you see the trend of growth of market cap of USDT, in 2020 with the pandemic, that triggered all the people in the emerging markets, developing countries, to start holding USDT as their savings account and their checking account. If you are living in Turkey or in Argentina, the Turkish lira lost 50% or 80% of its value against the US dollar in the last 5 years. The Argentinian peso lost 90+% of its value against the US dollar. So for us, in the last 5 years, USDT has always been an instrument of savings and the payment for hundreds of millions of users. Today, we have more than 420 million users across emerging markets, developing countries. We are growing at the pace of 30 million new wallets per quarter. That is almost like we were a social network. And that is what is making USDT very unique. We are not worried about the competitors coming from the big banks and consortium of big banks, just because they will look at the Western world. They will look at how they can serve in a slightly better way their existing customer base. Our customer base is the 30 billion people that are unbanked. Those are not touched by the banking system because they are not generating enough revenues on a yearly basis. So we feel that our market share will remain or will keep growing in the next years.
That's your competitive advantage in many ways. I want to talk a little bit about the run-ins that you've had in the past. Tether's USDT has been seized. It's been forfeited in criminal cases, including fraud and terrorist financing. You've also, as I understand it, has never been audited. So what is the progress with securing a Big Four auditor for proof of reserves?
So the 3rd of March 2025, so just a couple of months ago, we announced our new CFO that is a leader when it comes to contentious audits. We don't think ours should be considered contentious. It's very, in our opinion, an audit of a stablecoin like USDT should be fairly easy. We have issued tokens of a size of 152 billion now, and we have very strong reserves. By the way, we keep our reserves here in the United States with Cantor Fitzgerald. They hold our U.S. treasuries, right? So we have more than 120 billion in the U.S. treasuries alone. We are not a nation, but if we were a nation, we would be the 18th largest nation in the world. And so right now we are in discussions with different of the Big Four auditors. We are in good progress. There is still a little bit of adjustment phase on their side because from the previous administration that was very aggressive against crypto, the change from the current administration has been very, very dramatic. So they are going through the phase of adjustment, but the full audit is our priority, and I'm very positive.
Wait, full audit as in full financial audit in addition to vetting the reserves?
Well, the reserves of full audit of the reserves, and also the auditors will be looking into all our processes and all that, right? I think is fair and is what people ask.
You often make news for sort of non-stablecoin type of investments, even companies that are not involved in crypto. I'm curious how you think of sort of the long-term strategy is for Tether. It almost seems like potentially to create a sort of holding company, like a Berkshire Hathaway type of holding company beyond stablecoins. Is that a fair model to think of sort of what the ambitions are in the long term?
So in the last 3 years, the company generated generated around $20 billion in profits, which less than 5% were distributed to the shareholders. The rest has been kept in two parts, so we have two buckets. One is around $7 billion are kept in what we call excess equity, so is additional equity on top of the 100% reserves that we keep to secure the stablecoin. And the rest, around $13 billion, are used to do different investments. Recently we invested in Adego Agro, that is the biggest landowner in South America. And someone could ask you the question why you did that. But if you look at, first of all, part of our investment portfolio has to be kept for stable long-term investments, maybe lower yield, but still very, very solid. But the way we look at, for example, that company and similar companies is the opportunity of starting to use stable coins and use it in specific for international commodity trading, right? So we have been in talks with a lot of the commodity traders recently in the last year. They are all upset with their banking partners because their banking rails are becoming slower and slower. And so efficiency is very, very important when it comes to commodity trading. So stablecoins, USDT is the choice for them for making their portfolio much more efficient. So we are making investments also to test the thesis and grow our user base and market cap over time.
Tether CEO, really appreciate you joining us. Paolo Ardoino, thank you very much for coming in today. And Bloomberg's Michael Regan, great conversation.